Recording in progress.
Panamda pawb y croeso cynnes iawn i chi gyd i'r cyfarfod heddiw. Cynghorydd Charlie McCoubrey ydw I, a fi ydy arweinydd y cyngor. Can I welcome everybody to today's meeting, which is a hybrid meeting. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the Council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available, and for those attending on Zoom, to choose your language of choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. We will alternate between speakers in the chamber and on Zoom. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be unable to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware, and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. So we'll move on to the first agenda item, which is apologies for absence.
No apologies received.
Okay, agenda item 2, declarations of interest, code of local government conduct. Members are reminded they must declare the existence and nature of their declared personal interest. Would any members like to declare interest? Councillor Paul?
I'm a director of the community interest company behind that, so I presume I will need to leave during that item.
Yes, Leader, we'll note that as both a personal and prejudicial interest. Councillor Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, no other declarations of interest, members? No, so we'll move on to agenda item 3, which is urgent matters. I'm not aware that we have any. Chief Exec shaking his head. So agenda item 4 then is minutes of Cabinet. You'll note there are 2 sets of minutes to approve. Cabinet meetings we held on the 14th and 18th of January. Those are on pages 4 to 12. Jeff? You stick your microphone on, please.
On the first, Chair, could I be included, please, in the declaration of interest in relation to school governors on the 14th of January?
Okay, we got a note of that. Okay. Any other observations, members? If not, we're happy. Can I have a proposer to accept the minutes? Mr. Nigel, Mr. Cathy, second. Ms. Shore in favour of accepting the minutes. Okay, so agenda item 5 is feedback from outside members and outside bodies, the North Wales Police and Crime Panel. I'm delighted to welcome Councillor Louise Embry, who's going to give us some feedback. Emily.
So myself and Councillor Alan Hunter sit on the Police and Crime Panel, and it meets about 6 times a year, and there's also pre-meets before that, and then sometimes there is special meetings, and we also get a chance to go and see North Wales Police in operation and have certain away days where we get to see different parts of the organisation. The most important thing to remember is that the panel is there to scrutinise the Commissioner. It's not really there to scrutinise North Wales Police sort of operationally, it's there to scrutinise the Commissioner. And therefore we look at his priorities that he establishes at the start of his political term, and then we work out whether they're being achieved. We don't get huge amounts of sort of detail, so it's not like being a sort of county councillor and being invited to lots of scrutiny meetings or policy meetings as such. We really just come in at the very end of policy decisions, particularly around budget, to ensure that the Commissioner, we believe the Commissioner is scrutinising the budget and is making sure it's best value for taxpayers' money. So we don't have a huge amount of power. It's not like the old police authority, but we are there to raise concerns if we feel so. And if there is a concern operationally, then it's not really our role to raise it at that level. That needs to be done at a more local level. But I thought just to interest you about the budget, which has obviously been signed off by the panel. The financial departments of North Wales Police are very well run. We have to say that unanimously on the committee. They have really good medium and long-term financial plans, and in fact they were the #1 police authority in the entire UK on a financial resilience sort of scale. So they do really well. So it's hard to scrutinise a budget when it comes in last minute and requests, as they did request, for a 6.44% increase in the precept, to then come back and say, well, can it be less? Because we're not part of that process. We're not in budget working groups or anything like that. So, but what is good to see, and I think I just bring out some highlights, is that they do very well financially, and we felt that this rise 6.44 was fair, and it was unanimously voted on the other week. Just to remind everybody of the Commissioner's priorities, that is local neighbourhood policing presence, supporting victims, communities and businesses, and a fair and effective criminal justice system. That's his 3 main priorities. And obviously they guide the operation of North Wales Police, as well as the normal police calls they get every day. This budget allows for officer growth, so there's going to be a new detective sergeant in intelligence, there's going to be 6 new domestic abuse officers, there's going to be 12 detective aides to help with some of the financial crimes that happen. So they have a growth plan, and at the same time, of course, they are struggling to fill all the posts from the previous government sort of bobbies on the beat political policy. They do sometimes struggle with recruitment and with retention. So they find that retention, it's not a sort of job for life anymore. People try it out for 4 or 5 years and then leave, which is a big change from how it used to be. I would thought of interest to us as well around their capital programme is they are looking, let me get the page, they are looking at Colwyn Bay headquarters. So there's a project underway to consider options for this building, ageing building, changing working practices, want a HQ fit for the future. So that's going to come forward, wide range of options are being considered, and at the same time plans are being set out for the end of the PFI contract for the buildings in St Asaph comes to an end in 2028. That building will then pass back to North Wales Police ownership. This will result in revenue savings and consider an opportunity for reinvestment of corporate estate buildings. So watch this space. The HQ building at Colwyn Bay could just stay where it is or may move, who knows, but that's the beginning of that conversation around that. So there's it is quite interesting being on the panel. You do get to get a lot of detail about how the police force works, and of course we get to have the chief constable or assistant chief constable and various high level officers with us in this room. We all have to turn up physically. There is no virtual facility. And I think that's quite good, actually, that you get to meet these people and express any concerns that you have. So really, that's the update. Myself and Alan will continue to stay on the panel for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Yeah, Louise. Are there any questions, members? No? So just remains for me to thank you, Louise, for coming today and giving us such a thorough update, and also the work that you and Alan do representing Conwy on that board. It's much appreciated. So, diolch. Okay, so agenda item 6 is announcement by the leaders. Members, just to update you that as part of the Economic Ambition Board, one of the projects, the Tourism Talent Network, was finally signed off on Friday to move into delivery. It had previously been approved. The full business case was approved by the board, but there were a few legal details, as always, to sort out around grant subsidy, etc. It's essentially a £19 million project. It's a mixture of EAB funding, third sector funding, and private funding on a hub and spoke model. So there will be a significant development of the Llandrillo and Ross site, which will see a state-of-the-art hospitality suite with a commercial kitchen, front of house training. What I'm really excited about is the ability to roll those hubs out, working with those industries. And it's all about really promoting the amazing fresh produce, the high standard that we have in North Wales, and creating more seasonal, moving away from seasonal tourism, where food's a real driver of that. So I think it'll be a really, really beneficial project, not just for Conwy, but the region as a whole. And it's really nice to see it move into the delivery phase. Nothing else from me. Next item is the chief exec. Nothing. Okay. Agenda item 8 is to review the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. Members, it's on pages 13 to 38. Any observations or questions, members? If not, can we just show in favour of accepting the Forward Work Programme? Okay. So the first substantive item is item 9, the Corporate Plan 25 to 27. You'll find that pages on pages 39 to 99. Okay. So If you'll take your members to paragraph 3.1, it's an annual process for us to review our corporate plan. We've done that over the last 17 years. This original version was from 22 to 27. At the time, it recognised that were difficult circumstances ahead, but we know that actually the pressure in this council from a financial point of view has been far greater, far bigger than was anticipated at the time. We also, as part of our sort of review, looking at how we run this council, underwent a peer review with the Welsh Local Government Association 23. We were the first local authority in Wales to do that. They also recommended that we looked to rationalise the ambition in our corporate plan and have a closer alignment with our longer term financial planning. So essentially what we're here is a really pragmatic effort to make sure that what we're doing has our financial viability at the forefront, but also is aligned with the services that our residents want to deliver for us. We slimmed it down a little bit. As I say, it's about pragmatism. It's about being really focused on what we can deliver. Noting 3.4, it is important to note that with 70% of our funding coming externally, we are in many sort of fields hampered by the actual portion that we get there. But it is important that we have a sort of clear steer as to what our goals are. Members in the cabinet will be really familiar with it. There's obviously been a lot of input, and like to thank Yolo for the work he's putting into what I think is a really easily read and understandable document. It was discussed at length in scrutiny on the 3rd of February. They were happy to recommend its approval full council. So again, it'll be full council that approves this document. The ask today from us is 2.2 is to make the similar recommendation to move it forward to full council for final decision. So I don't propose to go through the report, as I say, you're all very familiar with it, but obviously very happy to take questions, and if I can't answer it, Yolo was here with us today. So open it up for any questions or observation, members. Chris.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, we know that the Welsh language and also diversity, equity and inclusion, which sits in my portfolio, are fundamental principles. And I'm glad that we've decided that they shouldn't be treated with time-bound outcomes, but should be tackled as a profile across all areas. So I really welcome that. And of course, they're underpinned by their own strategies and reporting mechanisms. So I just remind cabinet members that we've adopted our inclusive Conway strategy last year, and we have our public participation strategy as well, which is quite new and has been updated. The other thing I'd like to say is that the trade unions have been thoroughly consulted, and this large piece of work was on the Corporate Joint Consultative Committee, which was held last week, and of course that's all underpinned by the Social Partnership Act. So that's the couple of inputs I wanted to make, Leader. Thank you. And I'll second your proposal.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. Members, any other questions or observations? No. So we have a proposer, we haven't seconded that we'll bring this forward to full council for a final decision. Can we show for in favour of that, please? Okay, job, Pope. So the second part, 9.2, is the performance self-assessment from April to September 2024. That's on pages 100 to 209, and I'll hand over to Councillor Chris to take us through that.
Thank you again. Well, this large report, contains our performance self-assessment for part 1 of the 24-25 self-assessment process. So it is in fact a mid-year analysis. The transparency and accountability produced by regular reporting is vital, and we know we have a statutory duty to do this. The report has already been to the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I think you'll find that Yolo McGregor, who's here this afternoon, has worked hard to make this more useful and evidence-based. And I would also say that we meet accessibility standards much better. So after the review of the corporate plan is fully approved, and we know it took another step in its journey just now, the next report will be based on 5 new corporate plan outcomes instead of the present 9. But today we're still looking at the evidence status and updates on those 9 themes. A lot of live documents feed into this, and analysis is focused on the measures updates, the actions updates, and a roundup of news and committee items. You can also see that a section on the progress of our transformational work is included, and cabinet members will remember that a progress report on the resilience plan went to us last September. Yesterday, I was present at Governance and Audit, where this was looked at and debated. I think it's fair to say the debate centered around more stringent benchmarking and more data around service user perspectives. In other words, outcomes being measured as well as activities and targets being more reflective. So that's what was discussed yesterday, but it was supported. The appendix, which starts on page 106, contains a great deal of information, and I intend to just highlight a few salient points against each of the outcomes. And I'd welcome Cabinet colleagues to have any inputs they feel should be flagged up. So the first outcome is the environment, and we know we have a good, clear vision on carbon reduction and budgeting for net zero. There's been a lot in the press recently about bin collections, for weekly bin collections and residual waste collections. We know that we've successfully done this for years, and our recycling rate remains at a very high 70%. So I think we can be very proud of that. We can also be proud of our flood alleviation work, which not only has seen coastal defences improved in Old Colwyn and Llandudno, but flood drainage inland at Trevorrow as a phased scheme following the levelling up bid. I mentioned at Finance and Resources that we continue to show excellence in difficult financial times. And one example of that is retaining the level 5 green environmental standard for the 10th successive year. If we turn to outcome 2, a prosperous economy with culture at its heart, you can see how an impressive number of businesses are supported through grants. The winter number of visitors in Conwy exceeded 1 million. Our library and information teams work effectively, and more people participate in creative arts, heritage, and also museum activities. I think we can be proud that the level of external funding for the arts and heritage secured by us has exceeded 1.3 million. So that's really helped the local economy. Turning to education skills, 89% of young people are involved in our youth service activities say they have been encouraged to have a healthier lifestyle, and that can only be good news. Pupil attendance in primary and secondary school is not on target, leader, but the figures are certainly heading in the right direction. Following an Aston inspection in November 2023, we received a really healthy report from the inspectors. I think that was a real achievement. And also 2 Conwy teachers were recognised at the Welsh Government's Professional Awards ceremony held in July. Going to affordable, appropriate and good quality accommodation, there has been a decrease in the average number of days that homeless households spend in alternative accommodation. The performance report was looked at carefully by scrutiny because this has a red outturn for the delivery of affordable homes in the report. But I'd like to remind my cabinet colleagues that this is a snapshot of completions and does not reflect what is coming forward. Hopefully the difficulties experienced by developer and contractors post-COVID is having less of an impact now. The social housing grant programme, I think, has been a success, and it's projected to deliver over 600 affordable homes in the next 3 years. The replacement local development plan sits in my portfolio, leader, and we are on course to go to deposit in the next few months. So that will really help bring things up to date and emphasize our plans for affordable housing and targets. The 5th outcome is people in Conwy are safe and feel safe. While the data in this midterm period shows a downturn, reporting from the schools, which usually complete training and teacher training days, has not been uploaded into our system. So I think that's artificially low as far as safeguarding goes. The Safeguarding Board looks at training regularly and has a focus on casual staff to capture these for training as well. We know that cyber training is crucial, and we have a target of 100% for this. So there is a little bit of a way to go with that, but we're on to the case. The sixth outcome is on health, and we can be really proud of our fit membership figures. They continue to be impressive, along with the number of visits to our sports and leisure facilities. Reablement packages that reduce the need for support have gone up by an impressive 30%. At 6.39, which covers supporting recreation, there's been a correction after debate at Finance and Resources to reflect that the work on the paddling pools was mainly funded from the UK Government Prosperity Fund and not Welsh Government funding. I think if that could be noted, that's just had a correction in the report. The seventh outcome is the use of Welsh and participation in all aspects of community life through the medium of Welsh. Well, we know that the number of Welsh promotional activities in the county is impressive, and the growth in the number of staff, our staff, who take up the Welsh in the workplace offer is really encouraging. The 10-year strategic plan to develop the Welsh medium education provision has areas of improvement and development listed, but I think I get the impression the cluster initiatives are going really well at the moment. The slip from the 100% targeted posts designated Welsh Essential, which were filled by a Welsh speaker, that's at 93%. Unfortunately, this has been because of the recruitment crisis, and if there are 2 rounds of unsuccessful recruitment, these posts it's sometimes necessary to use the Welsh desirable context with them. Outcome 8 is informed, included, and community contribution. I'm proud to say we adopted the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan. There's also the LGBTQ plus plan and our Inclusive Conway plan. They're all referred to in the report. There are 4 actions listed in this outcome, and I can report that 2 are on track and 2 are complete, which includes the diversity and democracy commitment and the public participation strategy. Leader, I think we're all aware that the new communication strategy is now being used and has been adopted, and that is supported by its own action plan, which includes better analysis of our communication reach in the county. The now 9th outcome is resilience, and we know from our previous agenda item that we're going to make this number 1 in future, but it's the 9th outcome at the moment. So we're definitely going to be giving this more focus. At present, there are no measures identified as part of our corporate plan framework, but if I can just give you some update on actions, it's crucial that as our staff are our most important resource, that the Conway Conversation works, that we review our engagement activity, and that corporate recruitment project is implemented. The finance service has been working directly with CIPFA to benefit from their expertise and guidance and benchmarking. That's required a lot of our officer time, a lot of resource, but I think it's been very productive. Corporate spend management process has commenced in October. The procurement board reviews proposed spend over 50,000, while regular spend panels review and sign off spends over £1,000. Last week, we were all updated about the progress on the sale of Bodlondeb, and that work is beginning shortly to adaptations in Coedpechler. So that's all, good news, isn't it? In section 10, page 192 onwards, Leader, there are improvement actions that have been identified and undertaken during 23-24 in support of the governance areas. So that's taken me some time, but I think it's important to go through all the nine outcomes and just to analyze where we are. The recommendation is at 2.3, and I propose that Cabinet approves this performance self-assessment document, including the appendix I've just taken us through. So I propose that, lead, and I'm quite happy to hand over to my Cabinet colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate you taking the time and going through the document so thoroughly. It is really, really important that we understand where we are and where there's areas where we need to improve, essentially. So I'll bring Councillor Julian.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Chris, for sharing the report so thoroughly. Yeah, I just want to, well, in part to highlight the fact that obviously we saw, or we see in the report, a red in terms of attendance, but just to highlight, since September in that first term, we've seen a 2% increase compared to the year before in secondary, and a 0.6% increase in primary, and they're typically the terms that have quite significant sickness. And I think we're all probably aware there've been all sorts of bugs, sickness, and flu that's been going around. So that's positive to see that increase. Obviously, there's a way to go, but we did set ourselves a really aspirational figure in terms of, in the report, in terms of a target, a pre-COVID target, which other local authorities haven't done, but we wanted to be aspirational. We wanted to push the message that it's incredibly important that attendance improves. But overall, I just wanted to say, you know, for those who are listening out there, this highlights just how much work goes on as a local authority. You know, Chris has just scratched the surface there on the positive things, and obviously there are things that are highlighted in terms of areas that we can improve, but there is so much work that goes on in every area of society within Conway County. And it's a massive thanks to our officers, to our senior leadership team, to members, to the community themselves as well, who helped to make this possible. So I can't miss the opportunity to say thank you to staff. We're all aware budgets get tighter year on year. Funding that we receive from national government just doesn't seem to keep pace with the increased demand that we have, but we continue, and our staff continue, and it's massively to be thanked. So yeah, just wanted to highlight, and I think sometimes people out there perhaps don't appreciate all that we do, and I think that touches on that quite eloquently. So thank you, Chris. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, thanks, Julian. Thanks for your kind words. I think we live in a world where good news isn't news anymore, unfortunately. So it is important to highlight that where things are going well, and give credit to the officers for all that work that they do. I've got Councillor Emily.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for taking us through that report. I just want to echo Councillor Julie's comments about how hard the staff are working. It just really highlights when things are brought to us like this, just the breadth of work that goes on within the council, isn't it? And it's a huge organisation that just touches so many areas of people's day-to-day lives. I just wanted to touch a little bit on housing, because obviously that was discussed quite at length at scrutiny, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of reassurance on some of the figures, because they are just a snapshot, and it's complex, as many things are. But housing are still seeing, particularly with the development side, we're still seeing the impacts of COVID quite significantly. And obviously, when the economy tanked, it meant that there was lots of developers that went bust, which has impacted times and the scales in which that people have been able to build. So it does mean that some of the schemes that we were hoping to have completed in some of the years has slipped into other years. It doesn't mean that the schemes aren't there. It just means that they have slipped over into different years, which is why the figures that you see in the report are lower. And I just wanted to also reassure that we've got over 650 homes across various sites in various stages of development right now. So that's after they've had planning approved. We've still got a little more to go through planning, but that's 650 homes that have had planning approved, or that they're in the construction phase. So I think it's really important that that when we're talking about this and we're looking at the forecast of what's to come as well, because there's been a huge amount of work done, as Chris has highlighted, through us being able to access additional funding from Welsh Government, and you know, fair play to the team because they've done an excellent job in claiming additional funding and slippage on the back of what we were allocated in order to get some more funding for extra schemes. So there's lots that's going on, and particularly within the pipeline and the projections, you know, we've got over 674 homes within the projections to come in over the next 3 years. So there's lots of really good stuff that's going on. But if you just looked at the figures on the report as presented, you wouldn't really see that. So yeah, just to reassure people, there's been a lot of hard work that's going on, but unfortunately you can't build houses overnight. So anything that's happening with the economy that's outside our control, or anything that has happened, like the builders going bust or them not being able to build because of COVID restrictions, it has a knock-on impact on years to come, just purely on of how long it takes to get a development through. So hopefully we are bringing a paper to scrutiny for members to have a look at. I think it's the 27th, maybe the 26th of February, to Economy in Place. So if members want to come in and they can feed in as part of the local housing strategy there, they can ask obviously whatever they want in regards to our plans and moving forward with housing. So I'd really encourage anyone that is interested in this subject area to come along to Economy in Place to feed into that. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Emily. That's really helpful. I've got Councillor David Carr online. David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Just a few points on the remarks Chris made. On the bins, I've been out today prior to this meeting dealing with overflowing bins yet again, and fly tipping, particularly in it's an old coal when it's in older people's sort of bin stores. We're getting an awful lot of fly tipping. It's a real problem. So, you know, and I think we need that to be addressed. So, you know, really, you know, a lot of people are not in favour of the 4 weekly bin collections and never were. So really, you know, it might be successful in Chris's ward. It's not successful here in Old Colwyn. On housing, there's a real problem with young people now that are not becoming homeless, and that seems to be on the increase. It's very disappointing when members and cabinet members that were in planning committee vote against developments. There was a development recently, and people vote, and it was passed by the officers, and members voted against it. We need to support these housing developments, particularly on brownfield sites. On the LGBT, we're still not doing enough. We're not hitting. We're certainly not hitting the sort of the targets, which is low anyway. Just to sort of actually employ this council as a large employer, over 4,000 people employed, to actually have sort of the LGBT people in proportion to what we've got in the population here, and we're not hitting those targets even. So they're the things that I've got concerns about, you know, just briefly. So, you know, there's a lot of good news in Chris's report, but I think we need to be mindful there are a lot of areas we do need to work on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As I say, the whole purpose of this report is to show highlight areas that are going well and look at other areas where there are some issues. You know, you raised a few issues there. Certainly within my ward in Penzarn, there are some issues with communal flats with refuge, which we're aware of. I think ERF team did an amazing job actually of going in there on a really frequent basis and cleaning that up. And I think I absolutely am in favour of as much affordable housing as we can, but obviously the independence of planning committee is sacrosanct. You know, they have to make the decisions based on the matters in front of them. So yeah, thank you for your comments. Have we got any other? Councillor Cathy.
Yeah, leader. So there is a section that talks about the social care and education transformation programme. That will be coming in much greater detail to the Social Care and Health Scrutiny Committee next Wednesday. And I don't want to spoil that for you. It will be a very full meeting. That's the single agenda item. So it shows you how extremely important this work is. It's an annual update. We've got 5 current projects. under the 4 overarching themes, and these are all designed to mitigate the escalating costs and external pressures, external suppliers' costs for our children looked after, as well as our older people. I've been privileged to be part of this more recently. Our program manager has taken me through everything in preparation for next Wednesday. And if anyone has questions to ask specifically, I would urge them to come to that meeting and raise them then. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Kathy? Penny, did you?
Thanks, Leader. I just wanted to come back about the housing application being turned down. It was in Pandyward, Lamavec. It was actually outside the LDP development plan, so it was a boundary issue. Thank you.
Councillor Nigel?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to mention the business support team that we have. It's a small team of officers, and if you see the report, they've helped out or given advice and support to over 1,200 properties mid-year, says in the report. But it's also pleasing to see that as a county, we're attracting more people during the winter months now. We're up on that. So tourism, I think, is one of our great drivers of our economy and something that we should continually recognise and support. Thank you, Leader.
Job, Nigel. Councillor Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just going back on David's comment regarding waste. I mean, four weekly bin collection is a result of the success of recycling. 70% recycled in the county. If we weren't doing that, we'd be having weekly bin collections. If anybody does have an additional requirement for additional bin, that is there for them to collect, or the facility to be had. I would advocate, in fact, that they need to be examining what they're putting in the bin. The purpose being that we want to get up to 80%. And in fact, our target for the next 2 or 3 years would be 75%. I would also say, in fact, that in terms of recycling and climate and carbon, these are all additionalities which come into the workforce of previous people employed by the council. It's not something that it's been planned in relation to their workload. It is every member of the council actually is responsible for recycling and for carbon and for climate change. And in that aspect, they've all been putting in a great number of hours to help in doing that. So I would genuinely like to thank everybody involved in that. Thank you, Peter.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Chris, and then we'll look to kind of go to the recommendation.
Yeah, just very briefly, I just I'm aware, of Councillor David's focus on the quality, and I always appreciate that. Just to flag up for members that the annual equality report will be coming in front of elected members in April, and that will include an equal pay audit as well. So just to flag that up. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So, Chris, you've proposed recommendation 2.3. I would be delighted to second that. Members, can we show in favour of accepting that recommendation? Okay, Joe Pope. So we'll move on to agenda item 10, which sits in the Sustainable Economy portfolio. It's the end of programme arrangements for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which you'll find on pages 210 to 214. So I'll hand over to Councillor Nigel to take us through this report.
Diolch, Alwynedd. Members, you will be aware we are approaching the end of the last months of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund programme, and it's vital that we maximise the grant funding opportunities this brings. The report on the end of the programme arrangements for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund covers the situation that arises at the end of the grant funding programmes. Some projects declare underspends and decommit, while other projects have faced unforeseen increases in costs. The report seeks an agreement that the Community Regeneration Key Fund maximum grant award of £250,000 is increased where the projects can demonstrate a legitimate need. Members will be aware that the Community Regeneration Key Fund has supported over 4 million in grants towards community-focused projects, making a difference throughout the whole of the county. So I want to take you to the recommendation, which is on pages 210, and I want to propose this, Leader. And it is that Cabinet approves during the end of the programme phase, the additional funding can be allocated to projects previously restricted to a maximum UK SPF grant award of 250,000 under the Community Regeneration Key Funds where projects can demonstrate a legitimate need to increase the allocations. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, Joe, Nigel, I'll open it up for any questions or observations. Sorry, Dylan, I couldn't see you behind Chris. Sorry, apologies.
Yeah, sgynna i'm dim cwestiwn o gwbl.
I don't have a question at all. I would like to propose that we go with the recommendation, and at the same time, I'd just like to thank, I'd just like to appreciate what this has done to our communities across the county. They've had opportunities to do things that they would not have been available and possible without this funding. And I think it's important to thank the officers for their work within the department and all the work they've done and put into this. And we have to remember as well, after this has all been done, this has all been done in a very strict timescale, and they've done amazing work. And I'd like to thank them, and I'd just like to propose and go with the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, Joe, coming to you. Nigel's proposed it, you've seconded it. Any other questions, members? Just want to absolutely add my thanks to that. It's a small team. The amount of work they put in to administer this scheme and the real difference it's made is incredible, really. Grant funding is always challenging because there's a cut-off period. As you say, not everything goes forward for a variety of reasons. So to have flexibility, ensure this money is spent within the county is absolutely vital. So really pleased to see this coming forward today. So if there's no other questions or observations, members, you've had a proposer and a seconder. Can we show in favour of accepting it? Okay, Deal Pub. So agenda item 11, exempt item, Local Government Act 1972, section 109, schedule 12A, access to information. To consider passing a resolution on the provisions of section 100A brackets 4 of the above act to exclude the public and press from the meeting during consideration of the following items. As it is likely that if present, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 14 of part 4 of schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. That's on pages 215 to 218. If members are happy to move into private session, could I have a proposer? Emily, Julie, show her in favour, members. Okay, thank you. So we'll just wait a minute or two until we're confirmed we're in camera.